So we are trying to solving math problems, and we're going to find 5 steps. How many steps? 5 steps. The first step, help me read it, please. Determine what the question is asking. And determine means to figure out. So I say determine, you say?
Figure out.
If I say figure out, you say? Determine. So in order to determine, to figure out what the question is asking, I'm going to have to read the problem. Help me read it, please. Sierra had 1/4 of a pint of water left in her water bottle. She added 1/2 of a pint more water. How much water does Sierra have? So what is this asking me? How much water does Sierra have? So now step number 2. Let's read it. Determine the math concept required. So I'm looking at this. Sierra has 1/4 of a pint, and then she adds 1/2 more. When I see added more, I know that they're talking about addition. So the math concept, they're not telling me, oh, these are fractions with unlike denominators or anything like that, but they're telling me added. So I know that the math concept is adding fractions. Go ahead and talk to your partner and tell your partner, how did I know that the math concept adding fractions? And B, go first.
She added.
Eyes front. Vivian M.
Added because 1/4 is added by 1/2.
Okay, and how did I know it was adding fractions?
It says adding.
It says added. Natalie?
I knew the adding fraction was because on the second sentence it said added.
It says added, isn't it? It's almost like it's telling me, hey, look at me, added, so I need to add. Relevant. Let's read that. Relevant. Relevant is what is the information that has to do with the problem. So if I'm adding fractions, the relevant information is going to have to be, I'm looking for the fractions. I'm looking for the fractions because that's what I'm adding here. And I'm going to put a little circle around them. Number 4, let's read it. Solve the problem, then interpret the answer. Okay, but now I know that we have fractions with unlike denominators. And I know that fractions with unlike denominators, they cannot be added because I need the same denominator. They cannot be added. But I know the process or the procedure that I need to be able to add them. First, I need to find the least common denominator. So how would you find the least common denominator? Go ahead and do that and put the least common denominator on your whiteboard, please. Now I want you to turn to your partner and tell your partner that your least common denominator is correct and why that is. And B, go first.
The least common denominator is 4 because you find out all the multiples and then you get 4.
Eyes front. Show me your whiteboard, please. What is the least common denominator? 4. Can you tell me the least common denominator is 4 because? Can you get up and tell me?
The least common denominator is 4 because this 4 goes into 4 into twice.
Okay, but why is the least common denominator? Why is it that it's not 8? Because that's also a common denominator.
But 4 is smaller than 8.
It's the smallest. We're looking for the smallest number. That's what we look at. That's what least means. I see that you have an 8. Why do you have an 8? Do you want to change your mind?
I got an 8 because I thought that the 8 was the smallest.
Oh, do you want to change? Okay.
Yeah, but the 4 is actually the smallest.
Okay. It's okay. We don't have to be right all the time. Remember, we're learning. So what is the 4 is the smallest. Very nice. So now we have the least common denominator as being 4. But I'm not ready yet because I'm going, what's really the concept? I'm trying to add fractions. So I need to put them under the same common denominator. That's what I need to do. But I remember that if the least common denominator is 4, I can create equivalent fractions. So let me create the first one and then you create the second one. So I'm going to take 1/4 and then the common denominator is 4. Oh my gosh, that's so easy to do. All I need to do is to multiply by 1/1. I know that if I multiply by 1, I'm not changing the value. Go ahead and create an equivalent fraction for 1/2. Go ahead and talk to your partner and tell your partner how you create your equivalent fractions. A, go first.
I got my equivalent fraction because 1/2 times 2/2 equals 2/4.
Show me your whiteboard, please. I see that you have 2/4. How did you do that?
I put 2/2 because it's the same thing as 1/2.
Okay. What do you mean 2/2 is the same as 1/2?
No, like you multiply and you get 2/4.
Okay, you get 2/4. And why do you multiply 2/2?
Create an equivalent fraction and multiply by 1.
By 1, and 2/2 is 1. I have two fractions. What are the fractions that I have? I have 1/4 and I have 2/4. Now, I want you to talk to your partner and tell your partner, am I now ready to add fractions? Go ahead and tell them yes, why, or why not. Alexandria?
We are ready to add fractions because we got a 4 as a denominator and another 4 as a denominator.
Okay, so you have 4 as a denominator in both fractions. That's the reason why. So now, do you remember how to add the fractions? We add the numbers in the numerator and we keep the number in the denominator. So go ahead and do that, please. Write the answer on your whiteboard. Show me your answer, please. Talk to your partner and convince your partner that you added correctly, please.
You added correctly because you added just the numerators and you left the denominators stay the same.
What do you have on your whiteboard?
3/4.
And why do you have 3/4? What did you do?
1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4.
So what do you do with the numerator?
You stays the same. No, you add them.
And what happens with the denominator?
It stays the same.
It stays the same. Interpret the answer. Now we have to tell what the answer means. What is the meaning of 3/4? Let's read the question one more time. How much water does Sierra have? When you interpret the answer, all you're doing is you're answering the question. That's all you're doing. Okay, so the answer here is telling me that Sierra has 3/4 of a pint of water. Talk to your partner and tell your partner, how did I interpret the answer? How did I know what is the meaning of this? Manuel M.
We answered the question.
Okay, and this is?
Sierra has 3/4 of pint of water.
Always remember, when you interpret something, you're answering the question. This is the answer to that question. Check the reasonableness of your answer. Can we read that? Check the reasonableness of your answer. And the reasonableness, what that means, is this something that makes sense? Can we trust this answer? So I know that when I add fractions, at the end I'm going to have a bigger fraction, isn't it? At the beginning I have 1/4 and at the end I had 3/4. So this answer is reasonable. If this answer were like 1/4 or 1/8, I would say that's not reasonable, because what happens when you add fractions? You get a bigger number, and that's what we got here. So go ahead and talk to each other and tell each other, how do you check for the reasonableness of your answer?
See if you added correctly or if you got the right number.
You always make it.
Eyes front? Sarah?
Because you add 1/4 plus 2/4 and equals 3/4.
And then what happens when you add fractions?
If you add fraction, you plus the numerator and
No, but what happens at the end? Do you get a bigger number or a bigger fraction, or do you get a smaller fraction?
a bigger.
Okay, and that's exactly what I got.